What if I told you that the secret to living past 100 isn't a pill and it isn't a fad diet? What if the key is simply what you eat every single day? Foods that, over decades, shape how your cells repair, how your metabolism functions, and how your body resists disease? Here's what's really going on inside your body. Longevity isn't about a single magic nutrient, it's about metabolic health. When your blood sugar stays stable, your liver keeps processing toxins efficiently, your inflammation stays low, and your insulin sensitivity remains high. You dramatically lower your risk for heart disease, diabetes, dementia, and cancer, the major killers that shorten lifespans. Scientists have observed these exact patterns in the world's longest living populations. What the research shows is that the foods people eat where centenarians are common, places like Okinawa, Sardinia, Nicoya, Ikaria, and Loma Linda, share surprising similarities. They're primarily whole, plant-forward, nutrient-dense foods, not fancy or expensive supplements. They're foods that nourish your metabolism, support cellular repair, and reduce oxidative stress. So today, I want to go deep into the science, not myths, and answer the question, what should you really be eating every day if your goal is not just weight loss, but lifelong metabolic health and a chance to live to 100? Over the next few minutes, we'll talk about the research, the physiology, and, most importantly, the actionable tools you can start using today to support your energy, your weight, and your longevity naturally. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day. Before we go deep into physiology and protocols, let me outline the 6 science-backed insights we're going to unpack. Because longevity isn't random, it's metabolic, and metabolism is something you influence every single day with what you eat. Here are the 6 daily food principles that show up again and again in long-living populations and in the research on healthy aging. 1. Daily fiber to control insulin and feed your microbiome. The most consistent predictor of metabolic health isn't protein powder, it's fiber. Fiber improves insulin sensitivity, lowers inflammation, supports liver detoxification, and feeds beneficial gut bacteria that regulate immunity and even brain function. 2. Polyphenol-rich foods to activate cellular repair pathways. Certain plant compounds activate longevity genes like AMPK and sirtuins, pathways involved in autophagy and cellular cleanup. Think berries, olive oil, green tea. 3. Healthy fats that reduce inflammation at the cellular level. Not all fats are equal. Omega-3s and monounsaturated fats reduce chronic inflammation, one of the biggest drivers of aging. 4. Adequate protein, but not excess. Longevity is about balance. Too little protein accelerates muscle loss. Too much, especially processed animal protein, may overstimulate growth pathways like mTOR that accelerate aging. 5. Stable blood sugar. Through smart carbohydrate choices. It's not about zero carbs, it's about metabolic control. Chronic insulin spikes drive visceral fat, fatty liver, and accelerated aging. 6. Strategic fasting or time-restricted eating. Long-living populations naturally compress their eating windows. This improves insulin sensitivity, stimulates autophagy, and reduces metabolic stress. Here's what's important. None of these are extreme. They're daily patterns, small inputs, massive long-term outputs. Next, we'll break down the first and arguably most powerful daily food for longevity, fiber, and I'll explain exactly what it's doing inside your body. Here's the first food category you should be eating every single day if you want to dramatically increase your odds of living longer: fiber-rich, whole plant foods. Now, this is where most people underestimate the power of something simple. Let me explain what's really going on inside your body. When you eat fiber, especially soluble and fermentable fiber, it doesn't just help digestion. That's surface-level thinking. Fiber feeds your gut microbiome. And your microbiome is not just a passive passenger, it's a metabolic control center. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your gut bacteria like a pharmaceutical factory living inside you. When you feed them fiber, they produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate. Butyrate lowers inflammation, improves insulin sensitivity, strengthens your gut lining, and even regulates gene expression involved in longevity pathways like AMPK. What the research shows is that higher fiber intake is consistently associated with lower all-cause mortality, reduced cardiovascular risk, and improved metabolic function. People consuming 25-35 grams per day have significantly better insulin control and lower visceral fat levels compared to low-fiber diets. Here's the root cause piece most people miss. When you don't eat enough fiber, your blood sugar spikes faster, insulin rises higher. The liver converts excess glucose into triglycerides. Over time, that contributes to fatty liver, visceral fat, and chronic inflammation, the foundation of metabolic aging. So fiber isn't about bowel movements. It's about stabilizing insulin. It's about protecting your liver. It's about lowering systemic inflammation. It's about feeding the bacteria that regulate your immune system and even your mood. Now let's make this practical. Here's a simple daily protocol. Aim for 30 grams of fiber per day minimum. Start your day with chia seeds or ground flax, 1 to 2 tablespoons. Include legumes at least once daily, lentils, black beans, chickpeas. Add leafy greens or cruciferous vegetables to 2 meals. Replace refined grains with intact whole grains like oats or quinoa. Now let's move into something most people completely overlook, but it may be one of the most powerful daily longevity tools you have: polyphenols. These are natural compounds found in deeply colored plant foods, and they don't act like traditional nutrients, they act like biological signals. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Polyphenols create a mild, temporary stress inside your cells, and that stress activates repair systems. This is called hormesis. It's the same principle behind exercise. A little stress makes you stronger. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your cells are a house. Over time, dust builds up. Broken furniture accumulates, damaged wiring needs replacing. Polyphenols flip on the cleanup crew. They activate pathways like AMPK and sirtuins, the same longevity pathways stimulated by fasting and exercise. These pathways increase autophagy, your body's cellular recycling system. They improve mitochondrial efficiency. They reduce oxidative damage. And that matters because aging is largely the accumulation of cellular damage. What the research shows is that diets rich in polyphenols are associated with lower rates of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and metabolic syndrome. Extra virgin olive oil, rich in hydroxytyrosol, has been shown to reduce inflammatory markers and improve endothelial function. Berries are linked with improved insulin sensitivity and brain aging markers. Green tea catechins support fat oxidation and metabolic flexibility. But here's the key. Polyphenols only work if they're consumed consistently, not once a week, not as a supplement band-aid. Daily exposure creates cumulative metabolic resilience. Now let's make this actionable. Here's a simple daily polyphenol protocol. 1 cup of berries per day: blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. 1-2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, cold, high quality. Green tea instead of sugary beverages. Dark leafy greens or colorful vegetables at 2 meals. Optional: 1 square of 85% dark chocolate. Notice something? These are simple foods, not exotic powders, not longevity cocktails. The goal is diversity of color. Different colors contain different polyphenols, and diversity feeds both your cells and your microbiome. Repeat this with me. Color equals cellular protection, and when you consistently reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, you reduce one of the core drivers of accelerated aging. Next, we're going to talk about fat, and why the type of fat you eat every day can either inflame your cells or protect them for decades. Now let's talk about fat, because fat has been misunderstood for decades. Some people still fear it, others overconsume it, but the truth, as always, is metabolic context. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every cell in your body is surrounded by a membrane made of fat. That membrane determines how insulin receptors function, how inflammation signals travel, and how nutrients enter and exit the cell. So the fats you eat literally become part of your cellular architecture. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your cell membrane like the walls of a house. If those walls are built with flexible, high-quality materials, the house withstands stress. If they're built with brittle, inflammatory materials, cracks form easily. Omega-3 fats and monounsaturated fats make membranes more fluid and resilient. Industrial seed oils high in oxidized omega-6 and trans fats make membranes more rigid and inflammatory. What the research consistently shows is that higher intake of omega-3 fatty acids is associated with lower cardiovascular mortality, reduced systemic inflammation, and improved metabolic markers. Monounsaturated fats, like those found in olive oil and avocados, improve insulin sensitivity and reduce visceral fat accumulation. Now, here's the root cause perspective. Chronic inflammation is one of the primary accelerators of aging. It damages blood vessels, it impairs insulin signaling, it stresses the liver, it increases oxidative burden, and the fats you eat daily either amplify or dampen that inflammatory tone. This isn't about high fat or low fat, it's about anti inflammatory fat. Here's a simple daily fat protocol. Include fatty fish like salmon, sardines, or mackerel 2 or 3 times per week. Add 1-2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily. Include a small handful of walnuts or almonds. Use avocado as a regular fat source. Minimize ultra-processed vegetable oils and fried foods. And here's a powerful combination most people miss. When you pair healthy fats with fiber and polyphenols, like olive oil on vegetables, you improve absorption of fat-soluble antioxidants and reduce the glycemic impact of meals. That's metabolic synergy. Now let's talk about protein, because this is where nuance matters. Protein is essential for longevity, but more is not always better. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Protein stimulates a pathway called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin. mTOR is a growth signal. It tells your body to build muscle, repair tissue, and grow. That's a good thing. But here's the balance. Constant overactivation of mTOR, especially from excessive animal protein and continuous eating, may accelerate aging by reducing autophagy, your cellular cleanup system. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of mTOR like a construction foreman. When it's on, the body builds. When it's off, the body repairs and recycles old materials. If construction never stops, cleanup never happens. Longevity requires both phases. What the research suggests is that moderate protein intake, especially from plant-forward or mixed sources, supports muscle mass without chronically overstimulating growth pathways. Populations with high numbers of centenarians typically consume adequate, but not excessive protein, often around 0.8–1.0 grams per kilogram of body weight daily, adjusted upward slightly with aging to preserve muscle. Now here's the root cause perspective. Muscle mass is metabolic currency. Low muscle increases insulin resistance, frailty, and mortality risk. But excessive protein, particularly processed meats, increases inflammatory load and metabolic strain. The goal is metabolic balance. Here's a practical longevity protein protocol. Aim for roughly 1.0–1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight if you're over 40. Distribute protein evenly across 2 to 3 meals rather than constant snacking. Prioritize whole food sources: legumes, lentils, wild fish, pasture-raised eggs, tofu, tempeh. Use resistance training 2 to 3 times per week to signal muscle retention. This allows you to maintain muscle without excessive protein intake. Avoid frequent high-protein, ultra-processed snacks. And here's something powerful. Protein timing matters as much as protein quantity. When you allow periods between meals, 4 or 5 hours without snacking, mTOR activity decreases and autophagy has a chance to activate. That cycling is key. Repeat this. Build, then repair, eat, then rest. That rhythm is metabolic longevity. Next, we're going to talk about blood sugar, because if insulin remains elevated year after year, none of the other strategies matter as much as you think. Now, we arrive at something that quietly determines whether you age slowly or accelerate toward disease: blood sugar control. Because here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you eat refined carbohydrates or frequently snack, your blood glucose rises. Insulin follows, and insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone, it is a storage hormone. When insulin is elevated chronically, your body shifts into fat storage mode. The liver converts excess glucose into triglycerides, visceral fat accumulates, inflammation rises, and over time, insulin resistance develops. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine insulin like a key. It unlocks cells so glucose can enter. But if glucose keeps flooding the system all day long, the locks start to jam. The cells become less responsive. The pancreas produces more insulin to compensate. That is the beginning of metabolic aging. What the research consistently shows is that stable blood glucose levels are associated with lower rates of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and overall mortality, even in people without diabetes. Blood sugar variability alone predicts oxidative stress and endothelial dysfunction. Here's the root cause perspective. You don't age just because of time. You age because of cumulative metabolic stress. And repeated glucose spikes create oxidative damage inside blood vessels, nerves, and mitochondria. So, what should you eat every day? Not zero carbohydrates. Smart carbohydrates. Here's a practical blood sugar protocol. Build every meal around fiber and protein first. Eat vegetables before starches. This alone can blunt glucose spikes significantly. Replace refined grains with intact whole foods like lentils, beans, steel-cut oats, quinoa. Avoid drinking your carbohydrates, no sugary beverages or fruit juices. Consider a 12 to 14 hour overnight fasting window to allow insulin levels to fall. And here's something powerful. Take a 10-minute walk after meals. Muscle contractions absorb glucose without requiring as much insulin. It's one of the simplest longevity tools available. Repeat this. Stable glucose equals stable energy. Stable insulin equals metabolic longevity. Now let's move into the final piece, the pattern that ties all of this together: strategic fasting and eating rhythm. Now let's tie this all together with the rhythm that makes these foods truly powerful. Because it's not just what you eat, it's when you eat. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you consume calories, insulin rises. mTOR activates, digestion ramps up. Your body shifts into growth and storage mode. But longevity requires the opposite state too. It requires metabolic rest. It requires autophagy, the internal recycling system that clears damaged proteins, dysfunctional mitochondria, and cellular debris. This process increases when insulin drops and nutrient signaling quiets down. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your body like a city. During the day, construction is active, building, expanding, producing. At night, sanitation crews come out to clean the streets. If construction never stops, garbage piles up. Constant eating is metabolic construction without cleanup. What the research shows is that time-restricted eating, even without reducing calories, improves insulin sensitivity, reduces oxidative stress, supports mitochondrial health, and lowers inflammatory markers. A simple 12 to 16-hour fasting window has been associated with better metabolic flexibility and cardiometabolic outcomes. And here's the key. Many long-living populations naturally eat within shorter windows. Not because it's trendy, but because it aligns with circadian biology. Your insulin sensitivity is highest earlier in the day. Your digestive capacity declines at night. Late-night eating increases glucose excursions and impairs fat metabolism. So here's a practical longevity rhythm. Finish your last meal 3 hours before bed. Aim for a 12-14 hour overnight fasting window to start. Once comfortable, extend occasionally to 14 to 16 hours if appropriate. Break your fast with protein, fiber, and healthy fats, not refined carbohydrates. Avoid constant snacking between meals. This creates metabolic cycling. Insulin rises, then falls. mTOR activates, then autophagy activates. You build, then you repair. That rhythm is cellular resilience. And when you combine this with daily fiber, polyphenols, anti-inflammatory fats, and strategic protein intake, you create an internal environment that resists disease rather than reacting to it. Now let's bring this home. It's about daily inputs that shape your metabolic terrain. Fiber feeds your microbiome and stabilizes insulin. Polyphenols activate repair pathways. Healthy fats reduce inflammation at the cellular level. Strategic protein preserves muscle without overstimulating growth signals. Stable blood sugar prevents metabolic stress. And time-restricted eating allows your body to repair itself. These aren't hacks, they're rhythms. And here's what matters most. You don't need perfection, you need consistency. Start with one change. Add berries daily. Walk after meals. Extend your overnight fast by 1 hour. Replace refined grains with legumes. Track how your energy feels. Watch your waistline. Notice your focus. Longevity is not something that happens at 100. It's something you build today. If this added value, like the video and subscribe to join others optimizing their health naturally. And remember, what you eat every day is either accelerating aging or slowing it down.